Morning Year 3, we're going to be carrying on with our book again today. That's Stone Girl, Bone Girl. And yesterday Annie Philpott had just told Mary Anning about the sea monster and shown her that tooth. I wonder what's going to happen next. Let's find out. It was nearly dark when Mary ran down the hill. As soon as she pushed open the workshop door, she knew that something was wrong. The workshop was so quiet after Pepper died. To Mary it felt as if half her world had fallen away, like the farmhouse on the cliff edge. And there was no money. Her mother began to sell everything she could think of, and still they went to bed hungry. One evening, Mary wandered up to the churchyard. A heavy fog hung over everything. Ragged clouds dragged at a lemon-sliced moon. As she came to the stone that marked Pepper's grave, something moved in the darkness. For a moment Mary was afraid, but coming closer she realised it was nothing but a funny little dog. A little dog with a coat, like speckled Pepper. The dog bounded over and licked Mary's face. When she turned to walk home, the little dog came too. At last it ran into the workshop and curled under the table. "Perhaps you need a friend too," laughed Mary. From that moment, Mary and the dog were never apart. That summer, the town was full of holiday makers. As Mary and her dog watched the rich ladies and gentlemen wandering the streets, she suddenly had an idea. Perhaps she could sell her curiosities. She dragged a table from the workshop onto the pavement and carefully arranged the fossils from her collection, all except the snakestone around her neck. That she would never part with. She wrote a small sign in her best handwriting, "Curiosities for sale." Then Mary Anning and the little dog sat down to wait. The first to pass were a group of children. They began laughing and pointing at poor Mary. "Stone girl, bone girl, out on your own, girl," they shouted. All day Mary waited. She was just about to pack away her table when a group of ladies and gentlemen came by. "How fascinating," said a lady. "What are they?" asked someone else. "This one will make a delightful brooch, or a garden ornament." And so Mary Anning sold her first fossils, and as the rich people strolled away, Mary felt the weight of the coins in her pocket. "I knew I was right," she whispered to her dog. "These aren't just ordinary stones. They really are treasures. If only I could find that sea monster." All summer, Mary searched for curiosities for her shop. She borrowed books about fossils from the Mrs. Philpott and learned everything she could. Her mother was delighted with the money that Mary was earning, but she was worried about Mary alone on the dangerous cliffs. Mary reassured her that the little dog would run for help in an emergency. As she searched, Mary thought more and more about the giant sea monster and about the cliffs in prehistoric times. She imagined fantastic landscapes inhabited by extraordinary creatures. One morning, Mary was so busy daydreaming, she didn't notice that her dog had wandered away. She ran along the beach, calling for him, but he was nowhere to be seen. At last, she heard a faint barking and, looking up, she saw the speckled dog high on the sloping side of the cliff. Mary called for him to come down, but the little dog wouldn't move. He was furiously scratching at something in the clay. Mary had no choice. She began slowly to climb the rock face. At last she reached the little ledge where the dog was standing. Her heart missed a beat. She couldn't believe what she saw. Grinning up at Mary was an enormous skull. The little dog had found the sea monster. All morning Mary scraped furiously with Pepper's hammer. There was more than a skull, a whole skeleton perhaps, but it was far too big for Mary to cope with on her own. Who could help her? Suddenly she remembered Pepper's old friends, the quarrymen. Leaving the little dog to guard the monster, Mary Anning climbed carefully down to the beach, then ran as fast as she could to the quarry. "I found it!" she shouted. "I found the sea monster!" In less than 10 minutes, Mary was leading a group of quarrymen carrying picks and shovels up the side of the cliff. The news spread like fire through the town. "Mary Anning has found the sea monster! Mary Anning has found it!"